You know that feeling when you're in a room full of people, but you still feel like you're kind of on the outside looking in? It's way more common than you'd think. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into Dr. Brene Brown's amazing book, Daring Greatly. We'll try to figure out why we feel this way and, more importantly, how we can find the courage to really, truly connect with each other.
Yeah, it's that little voice, right? The one that's always whispering in the back of your mind. You're not smart enough. You're not successful enough. You're just not enough. Well, that feeling is exactly where Brene Brown started her groundbreaking research on vulnerability. And it's where our journey begins today.
Okay, so where on earth does this feeling of not enough even come from? Well, according to Brene Brown, it's not just you. It's not just in our heads. She says it's basically in the air we breathe. She calls it our never enough culture. And it's this huge social pressure that honestly affects pretty much all of us.
And the engine driving this whole culture? She calls it scarcity. Now, scarcity isn't just about not having enough stuff. No, it's that relentless, nagging feeling that we are falling short. It's like we're all playing this subconscious comparison game 24/7, and it totally messes with how we see ourselves, our lives, everything, really. So what happens when we live inside this scarcity mindset all the time? Well, it's basically a recipe for disaster, or at least a recipe for being pretty unhappy. We start feeling ashamed of who we are. We get trapped in that endless loop of comparing our lives to everyone else's highlight reels. And eventually, we just kind of disengage. We check out. We get so terrified of being ordinary that we forget to actually live and enjoy our own lives.
Now, here's where her research throws a real curveball. Get this. Brene Brown argues that narcissism isn't about loving yourself too much. She says it actually comes from the exact opposite place. A deep, deep fear that you're not worthy of love at all. It's basically a mask, right? A suit of armor that people wear to hide this absolute terror of being seen as imperfect or just, ordinary.
But, while Brown's idea is super compelling, it's not the only theory out there. We have other researchers, like Dr. Jean Twenge, who point to other factors. They argue that things like the rise of social media are a huge reason we're seeing more narcissistic traits. The truth is, it's a really complicated topic, and there's probably no single simple answer.
Okay, so we've kind of laid out the problem, right? This whole culture of scarcity and shame. So what do we do about it? Well, now we're going to get to the solution. And I'll tell you right now, it's probably not what you're expecting. It's a huge paradox, and it's right at the very heart of all of Brene Brown's work.
I mean, we've all been there. That moment your heart is pounding because you're about to speak up in a meeting or ask for help or be the first one to say I love you. Society basically teaches us from day one that feeling, vulnerability, is weakness. But Brown's research completely flips that on its head. She shows us that vulnerability isn't weakness at all. It's our greatest measure of courage.
But before we can really lean into vulnerability, we've got to do some myth busting. There are these huge misconceptions that hold us back, and we need to tear them down. So let's get into it.
All right, first up, myth number 1, vulnerability is weakness. I mean, this is the big one, isn't it? It's the one that trips almost all of us up. It's this deep-seated idea that feeling uncertain or exposed or emotionally risky is something we should hide, something to be ashamed of. But what if that's just completely wrong?
The truth is, vulnerability is the birthplace of, everything we want in life. Joy, love, creativity, belonging. Think about it. When we try to numb our feelings to avoid the bad stuff, like fear or disappointment, we can't selectively numb. We end up numbing the good stuff too. Vulnerability is just having the courage to feel it all, and it's the only path to real connection.
Okay, on to myth number 2. This idea that vulnerability is just letting it all hang out, oversharing. We've all seen it, right? That person on social media who gives you their entire life story, no filter. But that's not what we're talking about here. That's not real vulnerability.
See, the truth is, real vulnerability actually requires boundaries. It's about sharing your story with people who have earned the right to hear it. That's the key part. It's built on trust and respect, a two-way street. It's not a performance for an audience. It's about being authentic with the people who've shown they're there for you.
And that brings us to our final myth, the idea that we can go it alone. This whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. We're taught to be self-sufficient, to never ask for help, to pretend we've got it all under control. But honestly, that's just not how humans work.
Because the truth is, we are fundamentally wired for connection. We absolutely cannot navigate vulnerability by ourselves. Think about a tough time in your life. Did powering through alone make it better, or did reaching out to someone you trust make the difference? We need those support systems. They're what give us the courage to be vulnerable and the resilience to get back up when we inevitably stumble.
Okay, so we've busted the mess. We know what vulnerability isn't. So what's next? Well, now we get to the whole point of all this. It's about building up the courage to just be seen, to show up and be seen for who we really truly are.
And this brings us to what Brown calls wholeheartedness. This is the antidote. It's the way out of that never-enough trap. Wholeheartedness is about engaging with the world from a place of worthiness. It's about believing deep in your bones that you are enough, right now, just as you are. And from that place, you can embrace vulnerability.
So what does it actually mean to dare greatly in your own life? Look, it doesn't have to be some grand, heroic act. It could be something as simple as finally having that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Or maybe it's as big as quitting your job to chase a dream. At its core, it's just about choosing courage over comfort. And that choice, that's how we find our way back to an authentic life and to real connection with others.
Look, at the end of the day, getting knocked down in life, that's a guarantee. It's going to happen. The real question isn't if you'll fall, but whether you'll be brave enough to get back in the arena and try again. So I'll just leave you with this one thought to take with you. How are you going to dare greatly today?